life. And these are things that are true for all of us. And the first is life hurts, just period. God never promised us a life without pain. He just promised us that he would be there to heal us and to help us in the circumstances, whether it's our own sin or failure, parental failure, death of loved ones, especially when it's untimely or tragic, disappointments, abuse, rejection, betrayal, whatever it might be, life hurts. And it's just inevitable that the older we get, the more hurt there's going to be in our lives. The second emotional reality of life is, unless we deal with pain properly, when it occurs, it accumulates within our hearts. And this is why I call this series the hurt pocket. There's a place in our hearts that when we don't deal with pain properly, it drops in that pocket, that place there where hurt accumulates. And there are two unfortunate realities in life. And the first is, very few of us know how to deal with pain when we're growing up, and even as adults. If you have really wise parents who are godly people and who help pastor you through the difficulties of life, you're very, very blessed. But most of us were not in that circumstance. And even if our parents were Christians, most of them don't know how to deal with pain. And so we just kind of do our best. And in my life, I'm going to tell you about some of the things that happened to me in my life. But as things happened to me in my life that were painful, I didn't know how to deal with pain, so I just didn't. I just hid it, I just denied it, I pretended it didn't exist, but I had problems later on with that. The other unfortunate reality is that time heals nothing. And there's this old saying that time heals all wounds. No, it does not. Time heals nothing. In my opinion, pain gets worse over time.
When you're struggling, when you're having difficulty, when you're experiencing opposition, when you have a challenge, and I got to thinking about that, and I thought, why do we have such a hard time just saying when you're suffering? And so I did a little word study, and I found out that in the King James translation, the word suffering or suffer is in there 165 times. The Amplified Bible ramps it up a little. It's in there 175 times. I looked at one of the most modern, most popular translations, and it's only in there 59 times. And I thought, well, isn't it interesting? I hope that we don't modernize the truth out of the Word and get to the point where people don't really know what to expect and aren't prepared for it. You see, I don't apologize for talking about this today, although I did try to get out of it. I did. The first thing we want to do when we're suffering is we want to run. We want to get away from it, some way, shape, or form. But you know what? You got to go through the hard part to get to the good part. And that's really the main thought that I want to leave you with today. You got to go through the hard part to get to the good part. And that doesn't mean the hard part's always fair. Life is not always fair, but God is fair. God is a God of justice, and that's one of my favorite things about the character of God. And justice means that He always makes wrong things right. God always makes wrong things right if, everybody say if, we trust Him, and if we handle the wrong thing in the right way. See, so often we don't respond in a godly way when we're going through things like that, and then we just have to keep going through it over and over and over and over in the hopes that eventually we will get it.
Why this particular suffering? Why on this particular person? Why at this particular time? Why this particular intensity? Why with these peculiar complications, Lord? Why in all these particular relationships? Why this particular duration, etc.? When we're talking about those micro reasons, we usually don't have answers. The Bible doesn't address the precise, particular situation of each person. And that's where a lot of people stop and they just say, oh, we don't know why. Suffering is a total mystery. Instead of saying, no. Keep reading your Bible. When it comes to macro reasons for why there is suffering in the world, the Bible is rich with helpfulness. It's explicitly intending to be helpful for us at the macro reasons. We usually look for the purposes of suffering in the effect it has on the sufferer. So, for example, Paul says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about his thorn in the flesh that would leave me, but the Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. And so Paul concludes, well, okay, I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And so Paul, the sufferer, turns his pain into a Christ-exalting experience by showing Christ's all-sufficiency in his weakness. That's the way I usually think about trying to come to terms with why I or somebody else might be suffering. But what we don't usually look for is God's purpose for our weaknesses in the lives of others. In other words, could our weaknesses be intended by God, our suffering be intended by God, to draw out of others something they wouldn't otherwise have experienced concerning Christ?